ado, I am delighted to introduce tonight's panelists. So, with us here this evening, we have the wonderful Nancy Thayer to discuss her book, Family Reunion. And Nancy will be joining conversation with our own local Nancy Burns-Fusaro, who is the arts and culture writer for the Westerly Sun. So Nancy Thayer is the best-selling author of more than 30 novels, including Girls of Summer, Surfside Sisters, which is my personal favorite, and A Nantucket Wedding. Her books concern the mysteries and romance of families and relationships, marriage and friendships, divorce and love, custody and step parenting, family secrets, and private self-affirmation, the quest for independence, and the normal human hunger for personal connection. And Thayer has been a resident of Nantucket for 35 years, and I'm going to go ahead and ask her to start her video. So, as I said, Nancy's going to be joined by Nancy Burns-Fusaro, who is the arts and culture writer for The Sun tonight. And Nancy, our other Nancy this evening, is a Boston native who spent her childhood summers on Nantucket and eventually moved there to live year-round. And while she was living on Nantucket, she worked as a reporter for the Inquirer and Mirror newspaper, as well as the local cable television station. She met many wonderful people there, including Nancy Thayer, and she is the mother of 3 sons and 6 grandsons. She's married to a Westerly native, Sam Fusaro Jr., who she also met on Nantucket. And she spends most of her time reading, writing, talking, swimming, and walking. So without further ado, I'm going to let our 2 Nancys of the evening take this conversation away to talk about family reunion, writing, and all of that other good stuff. They're going to talk for about 25, 30 minutes, and then we'll open it up to your audience questions. And I'll be with you in the chat the entire time. I can't wait to hear your conversation, ladies. I'm going to leave it to you.
Thank you, Ani. Thank you so much. Hello, Nancy.
Hi, Nancy.
Oh, this is such fun. And hello, everyone out there in Zoom land. You know, I was thinking that before we begin, I should have full disclosure, as we say, that my sisters and I have known Nancy's husband, Charlie, since we were kids. Which was, of course, a million years ago. And
tell me all about it. Just give me the scoop.
Well, we'll have one of the sisters ask questions about it. We remember Charlie so when we were just young kids. I think he used to sail, didn't he, at the yacht club?
Yeah, at tennis. Tennis was his big.
Tennis.
Still a tennis. Yeah.
So, and also we were great friends with your late mother-in-law, the wonderful Martha Walters, who was a Nantucket legend and a newspaper woman who had a very important column, right? And I remembered when I was getting ready for tonight to talk about this wonderful family reunion, I remembered you once described your mother-in-law as being like, I'm going to quote, a beautiful white owl peering down from the height of a tree, while I, a yippy little terrier, bounced around the trunk. She has provided scenes for many books.
I don't remember saying that, but
I love that so much because there were times in Ellen, in the main character of this wonderful book, Family Reunion, that reminded me a bit of Martha. And also, I thought that's one of the many things I enjoy, Nancy, about your books is the way you capture Nantucket people. And I wondered, in this beautiful family reunion story with 2 very strong women who are related, a grandmother, Eleanor, and her granddaughter, Ari, who end up spending the summer together on Nantucket. I wondered if you could tell us a little bit about your inspiration for those women. And am I right? Did Martha come to mind at all with Eleanor?
Martha Walters has always been an inspiration. And Eleanor in the book is a grandmother and she's 70. And one of the things I remember was when Martha Walters turned 70, she started a social newspaper in Boston called Round and About Boston. And I remember thinking, she's 70. How can she, why isn't she just, Martha would never sit in a rocking chair, but but I was shocked that she began this new enterprise. And at the same time, my own mother, Jane, who was widowed, was 70, and she got married again. And I thought, why are they even bothering? But that's because I was a young idiot. I didn't get it. But they had a wonderful, they traveled everywhere. And my mother lived to be 92, and she really had a lot of fun. So they are inspirations for Eleanor, but also I'm a grandmother now. And it's, well, as you know, you have what, 6 grandchildren?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And isn't it wonderful?
Oh,
It's so wonderful. Oh dear. Just a minute.
you go right ahead and get that. It
No, I
certainly
just-
is.
Charlie, it's Tony. Sorry, I'm very sorry.
That's perfect for a Zoom meeting.
Yes,
So-
it's it's all natural. There, I'm putting the phone down at the side of the chair. So now that I'm a grandmother, I'm really fascinated by the fact that my daughter and I aren't as adoring of each other as my granddaughter and I are. I have a granddaughter who is 13 now, and she's so fabulous. And I adore her. I adore all the 5 grandchildren. And one thing Eleanor doesn't do, but that I do, is that my daughter is a vegetarian and I'm not. And so when the kids come and stay with us in the morning, I make eggs and bacon. And it's like, oh, the temptation of the devil. So that has inspired me to write about Eleanor and her granddaughter, Ariana, or as Ari calls herself, Ari.
Yeah. What a wonderful relationship.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And another thing, now that you said bacon, it reminded me of your many luncheons and dinners and cocktails. Tell me about that. Tell me about your food mentions. How did they come to be? Just from?
Do you mean in the book?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, people have told me I always have a lot of food in my books.
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess that's because, well, for one thing, Nantucket has fabulous restaurants. And because of COVID, we didn't go to restaurants, but the first one we went to was lunch at the Downy Flake. And it was like just going back home, and we were with Meg Ruley, who is my agent, and her husband, who's adorable. And Evie was there as the waitress. And we were all just like, it was heaven. The food was wonderful. The people are wonderful. So in Family Reunion, Eleanor has a rule that when the family all comes to visit on Memorial Day weekend, the first place they go is to the Downy Flake.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
That was a great part. I love how you weave Nantucket places into everything. And of course, the old family house, which must be happening so much now on Nantucket. For our guests here tonight in Family Reunion, which you can see right here, at the center of it, in addition to this wonderful relationship with grandmother and granddaughter, is a family house that Eleanor's children really are encouraging her to sell.
Yeah.
And that must be going on quite a bit on Nantucket these days.
It's been crazy here, as I'm sure it is all up and down the coast, probably in any resort area. But we have had a banner year, or rather the real estate agents have had a banner year because they have sold so many houses, because so many people will say, okay, I'll pay $10 million for a second home because I want to get where the air is nice. And so if you own a house on the island, it's very tempting to think, sure, I'll take $10 million or $5 million, whatever, because people have the money now to do this. So Eleanor lives on the cliff. She has a big old house that was in her family, and she has a daughter, Alicia, who really wants her to sell the house so that Alicia and her husband and her brother can have the money, the millions. And one of the things that inspired me in writing this was the fact that Alicia is very much like her own grandmother, who was very proper and had teas with silver and real teacups and used manners and was very, very proper. And Eleanor, who is the grandmother in the book, has rebelled from her mother. She's much more free and easy and carefree. And she tells her daughter, her granddaughter, Ari, who's 22 and has graduated from college. So she is an adult. And when she comes to stay with Eleanor for the summer, Eleanor says, okay, I'm upstairs. My bedroom is upstairs. You can take the bedroom downstairs so I won't know if you have a man come in with you. And some people have said, wow, that's pretty crazy for a grandmother. And and so Ari, the granddaughter, loves Eleanor, and poor Alicia, in the first place, all she wants is the money. She wants to buy a Birkin, which is a purse for $10,000. Do you have one, Nancy?
I do not. I have to confess, I do not, and I've never really even coveted one.
No, I haven't either. No.
But they do have such a beautiful relationship. At one point, Ari is making these decisions, as she does all summer, has a lot going on, including some surprises, which we will not divulge. But I loved how she hopped into bed with Eleanor and they snuggled up against one another, and Ari pours her heart out. It's just such a beautiful grandmother-granddaughter scene.
Yeah. I think that, well, I was very close to my two grandmothers and also to my two grandfathers. I was the oldest of three children. And according to my grandparents, I was the best, of course. Probably because I was the oldest and I would sit and read, and I didn't run around and wreck their house. I think the grandparent connection is so important. I think grandparents can adore their grandchildren, and it gives the grandchild a feeling that's quite different from the feeling that the parents give, because the parents love their children, but of course they have to discipline them. They have to say, no smoking, no drinking, you can't bring him in the house.
No sleeping with the man in the downstairs bedroom.
Right.
So Nancy, tell me about, I love the names of your characters. Do you have a process for choosing names, or do they come to you as the character develops?
I think they just really come to me. They come. Eleanor just was there. She just came. And I love the name Eleanor. You must have known Eleanor Jones. I loved her. I don't think there's an Eleanor I've ever met that I haven't loved. I just associate that with being very classy and kind and smart. And Alicia, her daughter, seems to me to be just a little bit more superficial. I don't know if I think, I'm not trying to insult anybody named Alicia, but that's almost like a French name, isn't it?
Yeah.
The names just come. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Alicia certainly is superficial. I mean, I'm not judging her either. Uh, I also appreciate how you weave in poignant and timely little messages here and there. And there's a scene that touched me, not only as a Red Sox fan, but as a sensitivity issue, I guess, with Beck, who is a young man in the wonderful story, who is going to be a therapist.
Mm-hmm.
And Ari says to him at one point, why did you always want to be the therapist? And he said, well, I wanted to be a Red Sox player.
Yes.
But then he goes on to talk about his cousin who took advantage of therapy and a young man from the island who did not. Can you talk about that for a bit and what inspired you to bring in the talk of the importance of having a therapist?
Of course, I've mentioned this before, and Prince Harry and Oprah seem to be expanding on
Yes,
and widening the audience for this particular issue. Not growing up, I didn't grow up here, but I've lived here for 36 years. So I've watched kids grow up. I've seen kids have many kinds of different problems. My own children have, and I've seen a therapist. I've discovered a geriatric therapist on the Cape, which is so wonderful. So somebody who says, yes, you're senile, but you're also crazy. So, but Beck is a therapist who is really wanting to help people. I think at one point, Ari says, well, what do therapists do? Do they just listen to you? And Beck says, there's a little more in there. One of the things you learn is what questions to ask. And I think we're all becoming more aware, especially with COVID, how much talking to someone who is not your mom and not your dad and not even your grandparent, how we need someone to listen to us and understand us and not feel responsible for us. You tell your mother you're unhappy and she says, oh no, I'm so upset. What can I do? I've tried to be a good parent. I'll make you some cookies, but you tell your therapist you're unhappy and they offer helpful solutions. Yeah. So that was one of the reasons I made Beck the way he is.
Yeah, very, very noticeable, very poignant, and very important and timely, as you said, very timely. Yeah. Another thing I love about Eleanor is that, and you just said this about a therapist, but is listening. She's such a good listener. And either Ari says that to her or I'm just remembering how she does listen to her granddaughter. Mm-hmm. And it's such a gift, such a wonderful, wonderful thing to do. It seemed to me very intentional. Are you a good listener, Nancy Thayer? I bet you are.
I think I am. I hope I am. For Eleanor, the whole course of the book was not only listening, but changing her own life. Because one of the things she heard was that Ari was working at Beach Camp, which is a camp for children whose parents couldn't afford to send them to camp, and they're working 2 jobs to pay the rent, which is a big part of Nantucket. And Ari works for Beach Camp, which is for these kids who otherwise would just be sitting at home watching television. And Ari says to her grandmother, I feel so bad that these kids don't have t-shirts that say beach camp, because all the other kids have t-shirts that say like Burns camp or Thayer camp.
Yeah.
And Eleanor thinks, well, I'll make some t-shirts. And it starts her back into the kind of person and the kind of enjoyments and pleasures of making, sewing, things that she had done when she was younger. So she listens and she changes too. Yeah.
Which is remarkable. I mean, she's just such a wonderful woman, such a wonderful woman. She really does a lot of changing, and she's strong, and she listens. But there was also a moment where she really took her son to task when he started asking questions, which I guess maybe our children wonder. You know, he said, do you have a power of attorney? Do you have, and she turned and she said, do you mean it? Do not resuscitate, right? Wasn't, oh my goodness, that was a powerful scene, Nancy.
Yes. I think those of us who are grandmothers and grandfathers are going through scenes like that, because at our age, in our 70s, for example, we really are more fortunate than people who were 70, say in 1940.
Yes,
we've had better nutrition, we've had all kinds of health changes. We've had penicillin, which people who lived in the, say, 1920s did not have.
Yeah.
And we have not a second life, but we can kind of play with our lives a little more and do more things. And I won't say what Eleanor ends up doing at the end.
We won't. That'll be a big surprise for you. You have a surprise in store for you, readers of Family Reunion. Yeah. Now, your mother. You were close to your mother, and you've written about her before, and she appears in your books over time. Tell us a little bit about your mom.
Oh, my mom was a great inspiration. Jane Findley. She grew up in Kansas, as I did. She read constantly, and then she worked. She had always wanted to work, and this was back when women weren't supposed to work. They were supposed to stay home and cook. And mother worked. She taught at a secretarial college, and then she worked as a grant writer for a hospital, which is like learning two different languages. One would be grant writing and the other would be doctorese, is what she called it. The doctor would have to explain things. So she was very inspirational to me because of the reading and her love of language, the books she gave me. And she was also, she could be pretty saucy. She and your mother could be pretty saucy. Your mother was a dynamite. Wow.
Oh, thank you for bringing her into this conversation.
Oh, she was wonderful.
Oh, she certainly was. She certainly was. And wouldn't she love being with us today talking about books? Yes, she sure would. Oh my goodness. Now, what is your writing schedule like, Nancy?
It's pretty much set in stone, which is because I've been doing this for so long. I get up in the morning, I get a cup of coffee, I go to my office and I write. And I write I write and then I rewrite or read until about noon. And I don't usually go out to lunch because by then I'm exhausted and sort of like zoned out, as they say. So I sit with Charlie, who doesn't mind that I'm zoned out. We have lunch, and then I might go do errands. I might send emails. But the most wonderful thing that has happened for me as a writer with my process is my phone. because at night when I go to sleep, it used to be that I would try to keep a pad of paper next to the bed because that's what a writer should do. But of course, I would always pick up the pad and go. And so I would start to go to sleep and I'd have an idea. This happens every night. And I think, oh, Eleanor should do this. Ari should do this. And I used to just write on a tissue, on a Kleenex, and just 3 words. And then this wonderful thing came along. And now I send myself an email and I don't even have to write it. I can talk into it and I'll say, Eleanor has to be sure to tell Alicia that she's not a little old lady. At one point, Eleanor's son, Cliff, says, the house is falling apart and you really need to do something before you end up being a little old lady in a bathrobe with 5 cardigans. And he's not very diplomatic in his view of what she's like or could become in her 70s. So I probably at one point lay down to sleep, thought of that, sent it to myself. And then in the morning, it's so wonderful. I go up with my coffee. I have all this email of things I should write.
That is great. What a great idea. I'm still writing, I guess, not forgetting I can talk to the phone.
Right.
As long as it takes translates properly and doesn't autocorrect.
Yes.
So can you tell us a little bit about your favorite authors? Who do you read these days?
Oh my goodness. My favorite authors are mystery writers because I just love mystery writers. So I would say my top of the list is Anne Cleeves, who's British, and she's written 2 series of books that have become PBS masterpiece series. One is called Shetland, which is set on the Shetland Islands.
Yes.
And the other one is Vera, who is this sort of disorganized, shabbily dressed, but brilliant woman detective in England. So Anne Cleeves, I just love more than anything. And Deborah Crombie, who lives in Texas, but writes these fabulous books set in England. I'm an Anglophile. I've been reading mysteries, but of course now we're coming into beach book season. And I have read quite a few. Yes, there we go. Yes. And at the same time, because I'm working on a new novel, and when yes. So I don't read books that are like the books that I'm writing. And I love beach books, but I'll probably save them until September to read. And right now I'm reading a biography of Molly Keane, who was an Irish writer. So brilliant, so funny. She was a friend of Noel Coward's. She was so great. And I have all of her books from Virago Press. And then her daughter has written a biography. That's what I'm reading now.
Oh boy, I'll put that on the list for sure. Before we check in with Ani to see if there are folks who want to ask questions, can you tell us a little bit about what you're working on, or is that premature?
No, I can. I'm right deep in the middle of it. It's called Summer Love, because, as you probably know, when people come to Nantucket for the summer, they always fall in love, it seems. And for some people, it just lasts for those 3 months. It's like, this person is wonderful and fabulous, and but the guy at home's pretty cool too. But it is also about loving summer and people who adore being here in the summer.
Oh,
And
good.
it's
Well, we'll look forward to that for sure.
past and future, or
Yeah,
past and present. Yes.
good. Oh, that's exciting. Summer Love. Well, that'll be
Yeah.
our next year's book.
Yes, I'll see you next year.
That's exactly it. It's nice to know that there's going to be another one coming down the pike, right? You finish Family Reunion and you're sad because you just got through the new book. But it's nice to revisit old friends, and then also to know that there's something exciting to look out for. Thank you, ladies, both so much. This has been so fun to listen to you talk and get your perspective in this really unique experience, because you both have lived year-round on Nantucket. So we have quite a few audience questions, and I just want to say to our audience, for those of you who have not asked a question yet, if you'd like to, go ahead and submit that through the Q&A feature, or if it's giving you trouble, you can go ahead and drop it in the chat as well. And I'll just go ahead and moderate some of these audience questions. So Jessica F. would love to know, what is the best advice you've given or would like to give your grandkids, and what have they taught you in return? I think it's a really sweet question.
Oh my goodness. The best advice that I've given them is, heavens, I don't know. I don't usually give them advice because that's for their parents to do. I say, be yourself. If you want to join the soccer team, fine. If you don't, if you want to sit in a room like a crazy person without anybody and read a book and don't have anybody talk to you, that's okay too. And my grandchildren have taught me to enjoy the moment, to be in reality. As a writer and a reader, it's very easy not to be in reality. If I'm writing a book and then people are still talking in my head, and then I'm reading a book, then I'm not as aware of what's going on. But with my grandchildren, and there are 5 of them, I've learned, I've gone snowshoeing in the winter and fallen down, and it's been the most wonderful experience because I fell on snow and I didn't break anything. But being with them, because especially younger children, that's all they know is to be here right now, enjoy the moment, laugh, read books. That's probably the best advice I've given my grandchildren. Read books. I've always read to them. Their parents have always read to them, and they are readers.
I love that. That's amazing. So you definitely, in your books, and Family Reunion is no exclusion, you tackle a lot of big issues in them. There's always some sort of conflict or strife that happens. And of course, we all encounter that in our life, but do you draw that from personal experience or from the stories that you get from other people? And how do you find these resolutions? Because I feel like every time I read one of your books, it's such a good lesson that I've learned from it, and the resolution, and I take that with me a little bit. So I'd be curious to know.
Well, that's wonderful to hear. Thank you.
How did you get so wise?
Trial and error, believe me, lots of error. I think my first novel that came out was called Stepping, and this was in 1980, and there was no Oprah Winfrey, and people didn't talk about being a step parent. They didn't like to talk about divorce. And when my novel came out, it had a wonderful reception because people were writing and they were buying the books and they were writing letters to me saying, I hate my stepchildren, what can I do? As if I had advice. But I've always been fascinated by families. Families are, we all come from a family. We all need our families. And families are the people we can argue with and yet watch TV with them later. We can have terrible, horrendous fights. My goodness, the things I've said to my sister, and now we're so, as you would know.
And I have 4, and they, yes, and you know, and they're my best friends.
I know. So I think
and very forgiving.
Yes. But but watching and listening to my children, for one thing, my daughter and her husband, my son and his husband, the things that they do for each other. And time is always presenting new challenges, and it's presenting new opportunities. And I've written in my book, Summer House, I wrote about a family that had a son who was brilliant and a surgeon, but he was also bipolar. Because I have a son who's bipolar, and he's doing very well. He's brilliant, and he's older now. He's not 18. He's probably 45. So when he was 18, we were just on the verge of finding out about what bipolar even was. I think I've watched his friends and my daughter's friends. I've eavesdropped on conversations. So I know the sorts of things that families have to go through. And I think what mothers have to go through, and fathers, I think being part of a family is really, really hard. I think it takes so much patience and tolerance and exhaustion and deep love. And I find that in all of my books and in all the families that I see. I don't know if that answers the question.
I think that was a very poetic and a pretty incredible answer, if I do say so myself. So coming back to the characters in this book, Kathy, a little earlier on, commented about she's read the book and she cannot believe that Eleanor's children are wanting to force her to sell this beautiful home. And she says she would be livid if she was in this situation. And she asks, how can Eleanor be civil to her daughter? And I'd love to hear a little bit about how you were able to get into the mindset of the character in that way. Like, did Eleanor surprise you that she was able to be civil in some way to Alicia? Because I wouldn't be. I'd be like, get out of my house. Go.
I think, first of all, living on Nantucket is a special kind of life where everybody is talking about real estate all the time. Everybody wants to buy a house in Dionis with a view of the water, or at Surfside, or in town. We live in town in the historic district. And this is always, it's just part of the conversation of living on Nantucket. I think my children will, on the one hand, they would love it if we sold this big old wonderful house. And on the other hand, if we sold the house, we wouldn't be able to stay here, and they couldn't come to Nantucket and enjoy the summers and the winters. I think Eleanor is not alone. I'm being distracted because the cat has come in. And
Zoom bomb.
In a minute, she's going to want to come over here. So if you see a tail go by, and here she is. So I wandered off topic. So did that answer that question? Thank you, Charlie. He's going to feed the cat.
Well, I think that it's helpful to sort of understand the dynamics of being a year-rounder on the island, because I think, and I know for myself, as I was telling both Nancy's, I was very fortunate as a child, and I got to spend quite a bit of time on Nantucket every year growing up, and it's sort of a cornerstone for me. And I would give my left arm to live year-round on Nantucket, but pretty much everyone I tell that to that has had the opportunity to do that says, wait. It's not as glamorous as it seems. And I'd love to hear a little bit from both of you about sort of that year-round experience, because it's very different than, obviously, juice bar ice cream in the summertime.
Yeah. Well, Nancy Burns, you grew up here, didn't you?
In summer times.
In summertime.
did.
And what
Yes.
was it like?
And then later year round when I was, I guess I moved there to live year round when I was in my 20s. So of course it's changed extraordinarily in the last 30 years, I guess, since I've left. But it was wonderful. It was a wonderful place to live. I wouldn't trade living there year round for anything. It was, yes, definitely quiet, very quiet. In fact, I worked for a time for the Chamber of Commerce.
Mhm.
And there was a wonderful woman. You probably, Nancy Thayer, remember the Kellenbecks. Remember Hank Kellenbeck? And they
Yes,
called him Hank the Bank.
Hank the
Because he
Bank.
was the president of the Pacific National. And Hank's wonderful wife, Mary Alice, was the director of the Chamber of Commerce, and really trying to promote business and trying to get people to stay on Nantucket to shop instead of going off island.
Mhm.
So that's in the early days of the Christmas stroll, which has now
Yeah.
become so extraordinary. You can't even, I understand, can't even go there. But I mean, you can't get there and you can't find a place to stay because it's become so popular. But in the early days, it was so hilarious. People would laugh. Oh, come on, you're gonna get people to stay. It was hilarious. I had a role as the talking Christmas tree, and I would be in the Pacific National Bank.
That's
With a
wonderful.
two-way microphone,
Yes.
talking to the children to try, just anything to encourage people to stay and
Yes.
shop and other people to come. And now look what's happened. So you can see the difference
Yes.
in those 30 years. It's gone.
There you go, Nancy Thayer. You have a new background character, the talking
I
Christmas
do.
tree.
That's not a bad thought, actually. I've written 3 Christmas books set on Nantucket because of the stroll, because of the beauty and the difficulty of living on this island in the winter when maybe you won't be able to get off the island. But one of the things that I love most about winter is the waves, the wind, the storms, the gale force storms. And I'll tell you, I'm not the only one. Everybody who lives here year round is crazy. Don't tell them, but they are. We all are. If there's a gale force wind and surfsides, waves are up, you go out to the beach, people are all there. They're jumping up and down. They're dancing. It's like we're some kind of primitive tribe. It's so wonderful. And then when it's quiet, you can have dinner with your friends for a long time, and you just have the candles burning on the table, and it's much more intimate and special. Winter on Nantucket is for people who like a little silence, who probably have a craft, or they like to do jigsaw puzzles, but they like to take a breath. And actually, winter is my favorite time of year.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Do you get more work done in the winter? Do you move through a manuscript done?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
So coming back to writing, Sherry would like to know, she says she loved reading this book, and thank you for continuing to write great books for all of us to read. She'd like to know if there was anything that you had to cut from this book. And then the part 2 of this, are you a plotzer or are you a pantser when you write? Do you plot or do you write by the seat of your pants?
I write by the seat of my pants.
Okay.
I'm sure I have cut maybe 100 pages, over 300 pages, let's say. Well, then I've written 400 pages because either I cut or my editor says, this is repetitive, or why not try it this way? My process is that I write in the morning, and then the next day I read what I've written, and I think, okay, this sentence is good, but this bit has to go. So it's not like I cut an entire chapter, although I might do that, but I cut a little bit every day. But I'm neurotic, so I have a file called cuts, and I put everything there in case I need to bring it back.
Now, do you ever take anything out of that cuts folder and put it and recycle it into a different book?
I haven't done that, but that's a good idea. I'll have to go back.
Oh, well. So coming back to ideas, you talked about how you send yourself emails at night when ideas come to you. So two-parter here. Susan Burns would like to know if you get ideas from your dreams, but what I want to know in conjunction with that is, does your husband want to murder you when you're voice to texting in the middle of the night? Because mine would just take the phone and be like, no more, you're done.
No, that's right. Shut up. First of all, hi, Susan Burns.
I
my
know it. Hi,
goodness.
Susan Burns.
Susan, how have you been? Oh, has she gone crazy? Or Susan, have you been able to do comedy on Zoom?
Yeah.
Yes.
She has. She has.
All right. Susan is one of Nancy's sisters, and she's so funny. She's brilliantly funny, and I miss seeing her. And I forgot the rest of the question.
Do you wake up from dreams with ideas?
Oh, no, I don't. I don't wake up from dreams, but I believe sleeping is part of the process. I believe going to sleep, which I always fight. I never want to go to sleep. I've never wanted to go to sleep. It's always been a struggle to let go of the day. And I don't wake up in the middle of the night and think, oh, well, then this man, Silas Stover, is going to come into the book. But the next morning, he will be there when he hasn't been there the day before. I think our subconscious, our minds at the back, do a whole lot of stuff that we don't know about yet.
I think you're totally right.
Yeah.
So, and now I'm laughing to myself as I come to our last question, because it is from another Burns, from Sarah Burns.
Oh, Sarah!
And I'm having to have a laugh, both of my Nancys here, that this event has kind of become a bit of a family reunion in and of itself. And I love that we get to make that joke,
Yes.
but it has. How fun is this? So Sarah also loves Anne Cleves, and talking about the Masterpiece Theater and everything, she'd like to know, has any of your work been optioned for film or television, or already been adapted into that?
I think almost all of my novels have been optioned, but being optioned is so far from having it actually be made, because then you have to involve somebody who can write a screenplay. And that is a special talent that I don't have. And then you need somebody to produce it and somebody who will act in it and all of that. And when I get an option, I pretty much think, that's nice, and don't pay attention to it. I think the first time I had an option was for Stepping, and I was really excited, and I learned not to be so optimistic. But now that because of COVID, there's so much more great television. There's so many more channels and so many more series that who knows what will happen.
I would love to see a series set on Nantucket. I think that would be amazing. I would just fall right into it.
Who knows? Sister Sarah is in LA. Maybe she can hook up with her TV friends and get something started.
Right. Okay, Sarah.
Amazing. Well, ladies, that was the last audience question that we have. So before we wrap up, I just want to encourage our audience one more time. If you haven't already grabbed a copy of Family Reunion, I so encourage you to do so. Or if you have and you haven't dove into any of Nancy's other books, you can grab one of those as well. They all feel like a little piece of coming home and being enveloped into a family. And with that, I just want to say thank you both so much for joining us. And I'd like to give you both a moment to sort of have a last word of the evening. And I'm going to drop the link in the chat one more time for our audience so they can get their own copy of Family Reunion.
Good.
Okay. And we're just so glad to have you here tonight.
Well, I just want to say thank you, and what a treat it was to see you, Nancy, and to visit this way and to feel like I'm on Nantucket again. And I am going to be there in a couple of weeks, so I hope we can bump into one another again on the.
I'm sure we will. It's lovely seeing you and hearing your laugh. Your sisters, you all, and your mother have this wonderful laugh.
Oh.
I used to see your mother at the hair concern, and she would come in, and Trisha would be there, and it was a family in a way. She was a wonderful, enveloping, nurturing person.
Oh, you have just made my day. Thank you so much for bringing her up twice and giving me the chance to think of her again. She was extraordinary.
Yes, she was. And I want to thank everybody who came, and I hope you buy my book and other books from Bank Square Books, because it's so important to support our independent bookstores.
Yes.
And Bank Square Books, I have been there. It's a wonderful bookstore, and it's so wonderful to be able to walk into a building where there are people who know about books and let you sort of wander around, and you can be in the world of books. So thank you, Bank Square Books.
Thank you for those incredibly kind words. And, just thank you again to both of you so much. This has been so much fun. And it was absolutely a lovely evening. And I will let you both go about the remainder of your evening. I hope you get to enjoy this beautiful weather we're having. I hope it's beautiful on the island as well, Nancy.
Yes.
And to our audience, thank you so much for joining us. Virtual events can't happen without all of you coming and hanging out with us. So we're really glad that you were able to take some time out of your evening and spend it with us. And with that, I hope you all have a wonderful evening.
Ciao.
Thank you. Bye.
Good night.
See you, Nancy.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, everyone.